I've played 2,500 hours of Battlefield 4, 650 hours of Battlefield 1 and 600 hours of Battlefield 5. Yes, I've actually played 2,500 hours of BF4, and that's why I consider that the best Battlefield game, because for me it just was. I've played a lot of Battlefield 3 as well, but mainly a lot of that was on console. Back to Battlefield 5 though, and yes, I have actually played 600 hours. At times I've had fun, but for the most part, I've actually found Battlefield 5 to be a real letdown and probably the most frustrating Battlefield game of them all. It's not completely rubbish, there's lots of fun to be had in there, and at times, especially during the Pacific update, I did actually quite enjoy the game. But since then, things have gone downhill and there's been consistent issues with the game throughout the 18 months it's been out, where it just hasn't been fixed or addressed. From what I've gathered, this is the opinion of most people that bought Battlefield 5, a game with a fair amount of promise, but one that has consistently failed to deliver and more recently has completely been outperformed by its rivals. How could you describe the current state of Battlefield 5? I think it's fair to say that it has more bugs now than really ever before. A game that still suffers from a vast amount of game-breaking rubbish that cannot at any point be defended, and in my opinion a studio that has no real plans on committing to anything of any value. Sure, right now I completely understand the fact they can't drop consistent updates, although some other studios are doing so. As I've mentioned in previous videos, I am playing a lot of Mountain Blade Bannerlord, not really an FPS game, but I really love that series, and that was updated every single day during its first week of release, and now they have beta versions, a CTE, they've got all sorts of stuff. So clearly Battlefield 5 is not a focus point for DICE. That being said, as I said, you kind of get a pass at the minute because the coronavirus outbreak is making it very difficult to update anything, especially on a big AAA game that also is on consoles, not just PC. 18 months in, and I highly doubt anything will change from now within the next year before the next Battlefield game comes out. In this video, I am just really taking a look back at Battlefield 5 600 hours later. Westy hinted on Twitter that he might be making a similar video with 500 hours played looking back, and I thought to myself, when the game came out I made a video, and I actually really liked Battlefield 5 in the beta when it came out, and I said I'd be quite happy to play 1,000 hours of this. It seemed like a Battlefield game that I could play 1,000 hours of. I'd play 1,000 hours of a game that's really good over the course of 2 years, because I play a lot of games and I've really liked Battlefield, so that made sense. A lot of people were like, you're not going to play 1,000 hours, fair enough, and some of the people said, yeah, I agree with you. Personally, I think reaching 600 hours is a great achievement, and I think many people watching this video would also say that the fact they've reached 200-300 hours is more than they thought the game deserved. With Battlefield 5, let's take a look at what people actually wanted, and maybe a look at what they actually got. With Battlefield 1 releasing to such amazing reception, a great audience, loads of views on the trailer, everyone really enjoyed that sort of stuff. Maybe it wasn't exactly what they wanted, but it, was a quality production. Many people wanted the same thing from Battlefield 5, but obviously for World War II, that bar had been set. They wanted absorbing, interesting gameplay with a focus on providing an easy game to get into, but an incredibly difficult one to master. That's what Battlefield's all about, and that's why it's so popular. It's almost a sandbox where you can go in and do anything you want. You can be that idiot that runs around throwing grenades, or you can be that incredibly proficient sniper rifle player, or you can be a run and gun infantry player or a vehicle player. You can be whatever you want at whatever level. That's why it's so popular. Whether you're a 1 hour a week casual or a 50 hour a week tryhard, it brings everyone together. Historical accuracy and a focus on the time period. Whilst historical accuracy is certainly not the most important thing in an FPS game, it is pretty important to a lot of people, and Battlefield 1 did it superbly. Battlefield 5, not really. Maybe DICE rushed the game and didn't have time to include proper battles, and the cutscenes that we got from operations in Battlefield 1, for example, some of the planes you fly into for airborne, it's just the same German plane and you don't get the alternatives to that. They've only recently started changing the uniforms to make them more realistic, and you have elites which just don't look completely historically accurate at all. It's a bit of a controversial one, not a lot of people care about that, some people really do. I'm kind of on the fence. Gameplay over historical accuracy, but also if you're going to do a World War II game, you kind of have to do it properly. Next up, a live service. DICE promised it and we bought into it. Having regular updates with lots of chapters sounded great, especially as we didn't have to pay for maps, modes and weapons, but as it turned out, the live service has been very disappointing. The focus has clearly been on paid cosmetics, with only a handful of maps coming out, and the Pacific, whilst really good at the start, was not really enough, and they certainly didn't capitalise on that good turn in the game. Then we can take a look at the community aspect. DICE would do well to remember that Battlefield has always been built with the community at the centre, whether you look back to the first Battlefield game made, Battlefield, Bad Company 2, Battlefield 3, 4, 1, even Hardline. Community was always at the centre of those games, and to some extent it still is with Battlefield 5. There are loads of communities out there, and that's kind of what keeps the franchise ticking over. Custom servers are a part of the reason BF3 and 4 are still sitting there with decent player numbers. Sure, they'd be successful without them because the games are really good, but for me that is what makes the sandbox that is Battlefield so unique and popular, and it gives it that edge that no other game has. Without proper RSP on launch, Battlefield 5 clearly suffered, with developers or whoever was in charge of the weekly rotations of maps and things like that. They don't really understand what people want. Clearly you had maps like Hamada that would empty servers and all sorts of problems. No good at all. People dropped it fairly quickly, and when RSP did come in, it was too little too late, and it still doesn't work properly at all. Communities constantly complain about the fact that RSP just is not fit for purpose. Private games don't work, people can't join, there's all sorts of issues, and it's a real shame. It's not exactly a novel idea either. We've had it in previous games. Loads of other games have custom servers. I don't even mind paying for them like I've done in previous Battlefield games. I just want the freedom to create the game I want, the modes, the maps, the rotations, the player numbers, the sort of vehicles, what factions are on each side, being able to change some stuff and have some freedom, maybe create competitive modes like 8v8 and 5v5 if I want to, and then potentially banning cheaters and balancing teams. That would be really nice. It wouldn't cost DICE a whole lot to produce as far as I'm aware, and it would really help the game, but for whatever reason they haven't chosen to do that. As I said, Battlefield 1 came out to a great reception, bringing the franchise to a new height. They were competing with Call of Duty, which is incredible, with Call of Duty selling 30 million copies a game or maybe more. Battlefield isn't quite on that level, but it is a massive franchise. EA obviously know that, that's why they're pushing so much with these microtransactions with Battlefield 5, and they do get a big title every couple of years. We're waiting a bit longer for the next one, so I am hoping that it's going to be a mega game that they've taken a bit longer to produce. But that being said, there's no reason why it couldn't just be another Battlefield 5. As we've discussed in previous Battlefield games, I think BF5 was released too early, not out of choice, they kind of were forced to, and then the next game is going to obviously have that extra few years. Interestingly, I am going to have a conversation with the same guy that predicted Battlefield 1 and predicted Battlefield 5 absolutely spot on. He has some contacts within somebody at DICE or someone who knows somebody at DICE, so that could be really interesting to see what he has to say. Hopefully he reports back that the next Battlefield game is basically Battlefield 3 and 4 mixed together with some of the polish from Battlefield 1 in terms of, you know, that modern animations and weapon animations is what I'm talking about, the amazing trailers, that atmosphere, and maybe an experience for the console players that was potentially better than Battlefield 3 and 4 to some extent. Let's see what he comes back with, and I'll report back to you with that. So to finish this video off, essentially, the state of Battlefield 5, it's no better now than it was on release. In fact, I'd say it's potentially worse in a lot of areas. 600 hours is more than I expected to get out of the game. But then again, I haven't played it for over a month now. I tend to go back and play it like hell for a week and then stop playing it for another few weeks because it just doesn't have anything to keep me there. Whether it's Firestorm that hooked you in and then you were let down by it, or just the fact it's another Battlefield game, hopefully the next chapter can be like the Pacific, be another big boost to player numbers and just keep us ticking over until news of the next Battlefield drops. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, leave a like. If you didn't, feel free to leave a dislike, and I'll catch you in the next video.